Hello everybody, welcome back to another D3 plus 2 battle report, and today it is 1250 points of Tyranids against 1250 points of Nurgle themed Chaos Space Marines. So let's get right into going over the list. And also an amendment on the last battle report, which was my first ever using the Tyranid army I've got here. I totally forgot a couple of rules for the Swarmlord that might actually have made a difference. Well, it might have made the win more assured, shall we say. I forgot that he affects reserve rules and that he can impart a special rule on a unit every turn. So I will try and remember this time. Anyway, 1250 points of Tyranids, my new army. Still learning them, so I'm open to advice. Swarmlord is leading the army. This time he got Dominion, Onslaught, Psychic Scream and Warp Blast for his powers. And he has a set Warlord trait of having a bigger synapse range. He's being guarded by 3 Tyrant Guard, no upgrades at all. And then we have our troops. Gene Stealers with Adrenal Glands, Gaunts, 13 of them I think, just no upgrades either. 2 squads of 3 Spore Mines just for causing a bit of harassment. 2 Dakafexes, so that's 2 twin-linked Devourers with Brain Leech Worms each. Horror Specs. And then a squad, oh yes, I also did actually manage to get some painting done, so all the Zoanthropes, not Zoanthropes as I kept calling them last time, are now painted. So it's a unit of 1. And a unit of 2. The unit of 1 has Warp Blast and Paroxysm. The unit of 2 has Warp Blast and Psychic Scream. And now moving on to the Chaos side. Chaos side is being led by Typhus. Rolled on his powers already, so he's got Nurgle's Rock because that's the Primaris. Force because he uses a Force weapon. Gift of Contagion and Plague Wind. Troops are 2 squads of 7 Plague Marines. They are troops because of Typhus. Then we have Havocs with Mark of Nurgle armed with autocannons as they appear. Binky the Forge Fiend as you see him, so it's the Hades autocannons and the Ectoplasm cannon. That is 20 Plague Zombies, rar. And then finally 3 Obliterators with Mark of Nurgle. So we'll be back in a second with the setup, the mission, etc. And here we are at deployment. There is no night fighting, and we've got Dawn of War deployment again. And the mission, for better or worse, is the Relic. Chaos opted to deploy first, so they set up Binky the Forge Fiend down here. And then we've got Typhus joining a unit of the Plague Marines there. The Relic, by the way, is the same one I've used in a previous video. It's the little flag there in the direct centre of the map. Happens to be in that terrain, the Nurgle Forest. So whether or not that'll make a difference to the difficult terrain, I guess we'll see. I think in the new 7th edition rules that bit of scenery actually counts as dangerous terrain, but I think I'm just going to keep it as difficult. I don't know. I'll see. I'll double check the rulebook if or when something makes it into there. The Plague Zombies are basically set up in a big line here. They're just going to throw their bodies at the Tyranid front lines to hopefully tie up some monstrous creatures, the Carnifexes or the Horror Specs. Behind them is the second wave of Plague Marines, just chilling out. The Havoc started in a bad place because they intend to use their first turn to move up and have this balcony here, which basically gives them a line of sight on most of the Tyranid army, and also more importantly, the Relic. And finally the Obliterators started on the table, and they deployed right around here. I guess their plan is to come around the corner there and again shoot at where the Relic is. The Tyranids, apologies for the fast camera as I move around the other end of the table. As per someone's advice on the previous battle report, I was going to use the Gene Stealers in reserve, but because this is the Relic and in 7th edition everything scores, I don't really see the point, so they're just hiding. They are in area terrain, so they'll have a save this time if they go to ground, it won't really matter. Maybe towards the end of the game they'll do something. The unit of 2 Zoanthropes, damn it, have deployed in the upper part of the building, and that is again to have view on the Relic down there because that's within Warp Blast radius, so that might pay off if the Chaos side gains control of the Relic and holds it there. Carnifexes are there because Carnifexes can score and capture the Relic, which sounds ridiculous, but they can, so I'm going to try and do that with them, I think. The Gaunts, they're just there to fill space, take some fire ideally away from the monstrous creatures to let them get in and do some real damage. Single zone there, Horror Specs, and the Swarmlord and his bodyguard just appear to be facing down them. I guess he wants to chow on some Obliterators. So all that remains to see is if the Tyranids steal the first turn or not. It was a 1 last time as well, right? Alright, well, stay tuned for Chaos turn 1. Here we are at the end of the first Chaos Space Marine turn. Basically the whole army started approaching the relic, the Obliterators moved up. The Havoc's got a bad difficult terrain move, so they also had to run to get into position, but they are now positioned such that 3 are on the balcony there. And then the 4th is looking through the window there. They have good line of sight of a lot of the main front lines of the Tyranid army. The zombies moved up, they're slow and purposeful, so they can't really run, so it's a bit of a mistake putting the other Plague Marine squad behind them there, but you know, if nothing else they're protected, and if the zombies can make it onto the relic, they could sit on it for quite a long time, maybe even long enough to make a big difference towards the end of the game, who knows. Binky hopped the barrier and as a result didn't get his full movement, and Typhus and the Plague Marines he's attached to also kind of moved towards the relic in the centre of that scenery there. In the psychic phase, Typhus attempted to use Gift of Contagion, which has a fantastic range of 48 inches, but the Tyranids just have too many dice. Too many dice. It was 4 power dice each side, and then Typhus obviously gets 2 extra, the Tyranid player gets 3 for the Swarmlord, and then 2 for the 2 squads of Zoanthropes, so the attempted manifestation of Gift of Contagion was easily shut down, especially because it was attempted on the Swarmlord, which obviously improved the deny roll. So that's it for the psychic phase and movement phase. Moving on to shooting, Binky was actually pretty good this turn. He fired his 2 autocannons, Hades autocannons. He couldn't use the ectoplasm cannon because of range. He shot at the Carnifexes and did 2 wounds to the one he could see. So that's him down to half health basically, but they're fearless though, so no pinning test. Other than that, Plague Marines managed to peg 2 gaunts, take them out, but they're fearless because of Synapse, so no harm there. The major thing though was the Obliterators. They opted to use assault cannons this turn and railed into the Swarmlord and his Tyrant Guard unit. There was a couple of rending wounds, so that just killed one of the poor things outright, and then there was enough wounds and failed saving throws that another one went down, so 2 out of 3 Tyrant Guard are down. Swarmlord's okay though, and he is ready to go after those Obliterators. So we'll now go into turn 1 for the Tyranids. End of Tyranids turn 1, and the swarm advanced essentially. There isn't many guns in the army. The Gaunts technically could have fired, but they moved up and then they ran. They got a 1 further run, so they aren't actually much further forwards than they would have been anyway, but still. Horspecs also moved up and ran. The Swarmlord and his 1 remaining guard also did too. The Carnifexes moved normally, and the Zoanthropes in the building there opted to stay still, as the one semi-hiding behind the statue there, and the Gene Stealers didn't move either. In the psychic phase first before shooting, I will eventually get used to including this every single time. The squad of 2 Zoanthropes, that's the words I'm looking for, they opted to use Warp Blast, and they opted to fire at the Plague Marines, which were just about in range. The blast could land around about there. But because it was Typhus in the unit, the Deny the Witch rolls were slightly better on 5 pluses, and they made it, so they denied the Warp Blast. The Swarmlord, for lack of anything better to do with the remaining dice, because the Tyranid side gets lots and lots of psychic dice, he opted to do Dominion, and he perilled. Still got it, but he perilled. On the peril table, I rolled a 6, which is the good one. You take a leadership test, and if you fail it, you take a wound. He didn't fail it, so he's still on full wounds. And he now has, until the start of my next psychic phase, a 3+ invulnerable, Fleshbane, Armorbane, and there was something else, but I can't remember now. Smash, but he has that anyway, I think. Either way, he's now got a 3+ invulnerable until the start of the next Tyranid turn, which is fantastic. And that's about it. The only casualties were from the Dakafexes firing into what they could see of the Plague Marines over there and who were within range, because it's only 18 inches, keep in mind, so they couldn't have stretched all the way back to Typhus either way. Got good rolls. Feel No Pain did not save 3 of them, so that is 3 casualties on the Chaos side, and that's it. That's all they lost. So the Tyranid side is down casualties wise, and well, wounds wise I suppose, but we'll see what happens as we go into Chaos turn 2. End of Chaos Space Marine turn 2. Binky shifted to the side a little bit to get eyes on the Gene Stealers. Typhus and the remaining Plague Marines in the squad he joined kind of spaced out a little bit more and also gave themselves more line of sight on the approaching Carnifexes. This squad of Plague Marines moved up, the zombies also moved up but kind of separated off to the side. The Havoc stood still obviously because they're going to fire, and the Obliterators, being the brave individuals that they are, they backed the hell away from the approaching Swarmlord. In the psychic phase, it was only 1 paradise per side, so that gave a grand total of 3 for Typhus to attempt to do something. He did try, he tried to do the Plague Blast, Plague Wind, whatever it's called, and it was easily shut down by the Tyranid side, so a very uneventful psychic phase, let's put it that way. Shooting phase went a bit more interestingly. Binky used his ectoplasm cannon and whiffed with that, but his Hades autocannons fired into the Gene Stealers, that nice shooting at me there, and killed half the squad, so that's 3 of them dead. So it looks like they won't be doing anything in this match either. I definitely do not know how to use Gene Stealers correctly yet. Other shooting. The Havocs opted to fire into the wounded Carnifex and killed it. They did exactly enough wounds. 2 wounds got through, he had 2 wounds remaining, so he is done. That just leaves the one there alone. There was some ineffective shooting from the Plague Marines into the Carnifex prior to the Havocs killing it, because I wanted the Carnifex dead, basically. The Obliterators opted to use last cannons this turn and riddled the surviving Tyrant Guard there and absolutely obliterated him. No wounds got through to the Swarmlord, it was just 2 that actually hit. So yeah, that killed the last Tyrant Guard. So the Swarmlord is once again by himself, but he is a badass, and I think he's probably going to get into combat next turn, so we'll see what he can do. The last remaining thing was that the zombies charged into the Horospecs. They basically just want to keep them tied up for the rest of the game so that they're both not doing much. The zombies cost a lot less than the Horospecs, so it seems like a good value proposition. The Horospecs in combat whiffed all 3 attacks. The zombies, they got about 5 hits, but they're wounding on 6s, so did nothing. So that combat's probably going to be there for the whole game. And that wraps up turn 2 for the Chaos side, so now we're going to move on to turn 2 for the Tyranids. A quick amendment before we go on to another turn, and I forget to mention this again. I keep forgetting to say that the Horospect has adrenal glands and toxin sacs, and also that in each squad of Plague Marines there is 1 Meltagun. End of Tyranid turn 2, and both squads of Spore Mines came in at the start of the turn. One got a direct hit with their Deep Strike, right there, behind Typhus and his surviving Plague Marines. And the other squad scattered roughly where I would have wanted them to end up anyway. Wanted them kind of back there, so they scattered even closer to my goal, which is to blow up on the zombies and give the Horospect a break. Anyway, for lack of anything better to do, the surviving Gene Stealers moved up and ran. The Carnifex moved up towards Binky. This is Zoanthrope, damn it, that was hiding behind here, moved up a little bit just to kind of keep Synapse moving up as well. The Gaunts moved up and then also had to run thanks to an appalling difficult terrain roll, but they are now touching the relics, so if they survive the next turn they can start moving back with it very, very slowly, probably. Also, the Swarmlord moved up and he made a 8-inch charge into the Obliterators. In the Psychic phase, the Swarmlord used Dominion without any fuss. Prior to that, Zoanthropes here, the squad of 2, used Warp Blast. They used the Lance profile and it fired twice because there's 2 of them on to Binky, and they got a pen through, so he's down a hull point. His invul did not spare him, and he got crew stunned and shaken, but he can ignore them on a 2+, which he did, so basically all he got down there was a hull point. The Carnifex tried to glance him to death with the Twin Link Devourers, and only 2 glances got through, both of which actually got saved by the 5+ demon save. So that was a very ineffective turn of shooting for Tyranids, as it often is when your army has very few guns, I suppose. In combat it wasn't much better. Horospecs failed to kill any zombies, zombies failed to wound any Horospecs. And finally, the Swarmlord, he whiffed a little bit on his strikes, which was unfortunate, and I did remember his special rule about giving a special roll to something. I hope that can apply to himself, because I gave myself Furious Charge. That's a mistake if he has to give it to another unit rather than himself, which the more I say it I think is actually the wording. So the +1 strength didn't actually do anything, I don't think, so either way. 2 wounds were enough to insta-kill 2 Obliterators. He survived, and he didn't manage to get any Power Fist wounds onto the Swarmlord because of the ridiculous difference in weapon skill 4 against 9. So First Blood hasn't actually been scored yet. Oh wait, actually yes it has, because the Tyrant Guard are gone. Or do they still count? They must still count. Yeah, so actually Chaos did get First Blood with the death of the Tyrant Guard in their turn 2. And that was the end of Tyranid turn 2, so now we're going to go on to turn 3 and see what Chaos can do now that the Tyranids have control of the relic. End of Chaos Space Marines turn 3, and apologies if you can hear it in the background, but someone is mowing the lawn nearby, and it's actually amazingly loud. So, Binky moved up to the side a little bit again. Typhus and his Plague Marines basically ignored the Spore Mines and just kind of shuffled. This Plague Marine squad moved up, and obviously the zombies couldn't move, and the Havocs opted not to, and the last Obliterator was stuck in combat. Psychic Phase, once again Typhus attempted to do Plague Wind, or whatever it's called, and once again it was easily denied because of the superior number of dice that the Tyranid player can basically roll for the one psychic power the Chaos Psych can attempt to do per turn. In shooting, Binky was going to fire at the Zoanthropes, but they're actually not really that big a threat other than Warp Blast. So he instead opted to fire at the Carnifex and did 2 wounds. Typhus's squad also fired at the Carnifex, did nothing, including the Melt Gun, which is barely in range. One Gene Stealer died, and I can't remember how it died. Oh, it was pot shots, I think. No, wait, no, it wasn't from them. Something killed. Oh, I remember now. The Ectoplasm Cannon from Binky, which was also aimed at the Carnifex, scattered and barely covered the one Gene Stealer, and so the Gene Stealer got splatted by the plasma. This squad rapid fired into the Gaunts and managed to kill only 2, but it killed the one that was claiming the relic, so the relic is now back to being unclaimed, annoyingly. The Havocs also opted to fire at the Gaunts, basically to thin their number, and 2 more died to that as a result, but they're fearless because they're in Synapse, or was. I'm not actually sure if they are now. They might be just in, thanks to the guy at the back there. In the combats, the Horospex took a wound from the zombie pile, the zombie horde rather, that's smacking his ankles at present. In return, he actually managed to kill 2 of them, thankfully. So, you know, something happened at least. And in the combat over here, which was not what the Chaos side wanted to happen really, the Swarmlord easily smushed the last Obliterator, and then got to consolidate a little bit, so he could now technically go bite the back of the Havocs. As we go into Tyranids turn 3. And at the end of Tyranids turn 3, there's been a lot of bloodshed on both sides, kind of. So the Carnifex moved up and shot into Binky, took off 1 more hull point with a glance that wasn't saved by the invul, then charged it, and Living Battering Ram at initiative step 10 is his Hammer of Wrath D3 rather. They took out Binky's last hull point. Even it didn't have AP though, so there was no explosion, but Binky is gone, so he consolidated over here. The Gene Stealers moved up and attempted to charge Typhus and his unit. 1 died to Overwatch on the way in. The Survivor lasted all of combat. That is the luckiest Gene Stealer in the entire world. The Spore Mines just kind of shuffled up. They can only move 3 inches, so there isn't much they can do. I totally forgot the Psychic Phase again. The 2 Zoanthropes here tried to manifest Warp Blast once again. Tried to fire it into the Plague Marines down there. They did actually catch one of them, I think, but Feel No Pain protected them. The Gaunts moved up to reclaim the relic yet again, and they shot their Flesh Borers, so that was the first time I've ever been able to fire those, into the Plague Marines. Did absolutely nothing. Strength 3 against Toughness 5, no AP is not going to, well, no AP that matters anyway, is not going to get stuff done. They opted not to charge. They're going to hide and cover and hope that maybe Overwatch protects them against the inevitable charge by the Plague Marines next turn. This Zoanthrope moved up to keep Synapse. They're barely staying in Synapse range, the Gaunts now. The ones at the back are basically holding them in. In the combat here, the Spore Mine cluster at the back there moved in and joined in, causing a large blast explosion over one of them. It's strength 4, but it gets +1 per mine in the exploding cluster. It took out, I think, 5 zombies. The Horospex also took out 1 or 2. Yeah, I think it was 2, which also means he regains a wound lost earlier in the fight, so he's back to full wounds because the surviving zombies did not manage to do anything. And finally, the Swarmlord moved up in his movement phase and kind of was perched kind of up here. He had enough to get onto the 2nd floor. He made a very simple charge against the Havocs. Keep in mind though, as I was saying in the last battle report, it is possible to fail a charge now because you get -2 when you're charging through difficult terrain. Didn't matter here, but just bringing it up as a thing. The Swarmlord absolutely annihilated the Havocs, even though they attempted to wound him and hardly failed. His consolidation was a bit bad though, so it only meant that he could get down to the bottom floor again, but that's it. So, Havocs are gone, and there's a lot of units stuck in combat. But that's not really important. What is important is who's going to be holding this relic at the end of the game. So we're now going to move into Space Marines turn 4. End of Chaos turn 4, and the turns have started to get really quick, basically because there was no shooting other than with pistols on the charge, or prior to the charge. So we're just going to kind of skip ahead. Psychic phase, Typhus attempted to manifest Force weapon and actually got it, so his weapon is currently Force. He's preempting the Carnifex perhaps actually getting into combat next turn, because you'll still have it until this next Chaos turn. So that was all there was there. The Plague Marines, this is the important bit. They fired their pistols before mounting a charge. Pistols took out a couple of gaunts. In combat they took no casualties and very easily took out the gaunts. Now they got a good consolidation move of 4 inches, which put one of them in base contact with the relic. That still counts as him claiming it, even though it's not the movement phase, right? So basically I'm asking because can he move back with the relic at the start of the next movement phase, or does he have to stay in base contact for the movement phase? I'm not sure on that. It might not matter if they get wiped off the board in the next turn, but given that a lot of the Tyranid army is also locked in combat, even though Chaos has taken massive casualties, they're standing a good chance of winning. The Horspect took out 1 zombie. The zombies that remain did nothing to him. And that's it for Chaos turn 4. So now we're going to go to... Oh, I should mention, after killing the Gene Stealer, I totally forgot to mention that. Typhus and his Plague Marine splatted the final Gene Stealer, so that's the Gene Stealer's gone. They got a 6 for their Consolidate, so they moved into cover just to make it potentially possible for the Carnifex to fail to charge them. The Spore Mines potentially too. Right, so we'll go on to Tyranids turn 4. Going really quick now as we get to the end of Tyranid turn 4. The Zoanthropes tried to be the heroes of the match now because, well, after not much moving, because basically the only thing they can move is, well, this Zoanthrope moved up a little bit to try and keep Synapse. The Swarm Lord also moved up and ran around the building that he'd been hiding behind after killing the Havocs, but he couldn't do anything else. In the Psychic phase, the unit of 2 Zoanthropes manifested Warp Blast successfully. They launched it at the Plague Marines and killed 1. They also perilled and got a 6 on the table again, and then failed the leadership. Now I'm not actually sure how this works. If a Brotherhood of Psychers unit fails and takes a wound, does one of the randomly selected people in the unit take the wound, or did the whole unit take a wound? I don't think it's going to matter for this match, but if you know, let me know. I'll read the rulebook afterwards and probably find out for myself as well, but confirmation would be nice. So either way, one Zoanthrope wounded itself at the very least, but they also got that 6, so that means they now have a 3, well, they already had a 3+ invuln. But now they've got Fleshbane, Armorbane and Smash, or whatever it was. Again, it's not going to matter, so I didn't really commit it to memory. But also the single Zoanthrope also cast Warp Blast, also on the Plague Marines, and also only killed one of them. But he killed the one that was holding the relic, so the relic is now unclaimed. Obviously the Plague Marines can very easily capture it again on the 5th Chaos turn, but it means they still have to stay there and they can't retreat. Not that they'd want to, now that big old Chumpy Mick Teeth is over there. But still, in this combat here, nothing. No wounds on either side. Very embarrassing that the Horspect can't take out a horde of zombies who are nibbling his ankles and not being able to wound him. The most embarrassing thing though was here. Spore Mines have to charge half their charge distance, and that coupled with the charging through difficult terrain meant that they failed a 2.5 inch charge to touch Typhus, so they won't be doing anything. But it was even worse for the poor old Carnifex. He shot at them and did nothing, and then didn't make the charge. He rolled a 2 and a 1. If he had Fleet, that would have been different, that's for sure. So now he's just kind of stuck there twiddling his many thumbs. So that was a very ineffective turn for the Tyranids. It's still very much it could go either way, basically. The Chaos side has First Blood, but Tyranids have Linebreaker, thanks to old, what's his name down there, Swarmlord. So it might come down to either Warlord dying or who holds the relic at the end of what is potentially the last turn. I guess we'll find out as we go into Chaos turn 5. At the end of turn 5 for the Chaos Space Marines, they have decided that they're not going to win a battle of attrition, so they're instead going to try and win in a very gamey way by simply holding the relic. Also choosing to decide that discretion is the better part of valour, Typhus and the Plague Marine squad he's connected to moved off of the cover they were in and started also walking towards the relic. The Plague Marines that were in the scenery there also moved up and actually are touching the relic, so they now have it claimed. In the shooting phase, what shooting there was to have, this squad took pot shots at the Carnifex and did not hurt it at all. Now what was the turn up for the books was the Melta-Gun in this Plague Marine squad, so I'm glad I remembered to include a little amendment that each of these squads had one Melta-Gun in them. got a lucky wound on the Zoanthrope and insta-killed it. So that's one Zoanthrope down. The squad of 2 is still alive up there though. And the Swarmlord is close enough that the Horsepex isn't going to be affected by Synapse range. But the Carnifex, I'm pretty sure, isn't in Synapse range. So we'll get to see what it does to itself at the start of Tyranid's turn 5, which I think we're going to go into now. Oh, sorry. Combat, nothing happened. You know, just keeping the record straight here. Nothing happened. Let's move on. Tyranid turn 5. And at the end of Tyranid turn 5, it may be that the Tyranids didn't do quite enough to win if indeed the game ends on this turn. Swarmlord moved up. He gave preferred enemy to the Horsepex, but it made no difference. There was no wounds on either side. Again, the Spore Mines charged into Typhus and his unit of Plague Marines first because they wanted to eat up the Overwatch. One died to Overwatch. The other 2 made it in and also managed to do 1 wound eventually with the explosion. And the Psychic Phase, Warp Blast from the squad of 2 Zoanthropes was also made on that squad. It managed to hit and kill 1. The Carnifex also managed to kill 1, so that should be 3 in total, yes. So 1 was killed by the Mines, 1 was killed by the Carnifex, 1 was killed by the Zones. Yep, that was right. So that leaves Typhus and 1 Plague Marine. Unfortunately, the Carnifex failed his charge. The Swarmlord tried to charge anyway, even though it was a long one, because the Spore Mines had already used up Overwatch, and he failed as well. So Chaos still holds the Relic. And we're going to see whether the game ends now as we grab a die here. On a 1 or a 2 it ends, but that's a 6, so we're going into turn 6. End of Chaos Space Marine turn 6, and that saw the Chaos side doing some pretty scummy stuff. Typhus broke off from the 1 surviving Plague Marine so that the 1 surviving Plague Marine could walk in such a way that he's now obstructing the Swarmlord in case Typhus couldn't get far enough away that there was a potential for charging in the 6th Tyranid turn. So he's now just literally just standing in the way. Didn't even attempt to charge because that would be suicide. He also took shots at the Carnifex and so did this squad, but nothing hurt it. The Horsepex managed to take out 2 more zombies. Big up for you, you're doing an incredible job for the team here. And the zombies did nothing back. So the one thing that mattered prior to getting into combat, and once again I forget to mention the Psychic Phase at the time it actually happens, it's before the shooting in case you aren't aware. Sorry, a loud car went past the window, sorry for that cut. As I was saying, Typhus started the Psychic Phase. I see a hair hanging on his horn, sorry, let me just get rid of that. He used Plague Wind and that actually dealt a wound to the Carnifex. He then charged it. He took 1 wound on the way in from Overwatch, but then thoroughly smashed the Carnifex with his 1 remaining wound and it went down. He did actually get to strike first because Typhus was initiative 1, and I should point out, in the previous combat where Typhus and the Plague Marines were fighting the Gene Stealers, I totally forgot the Demon Weapon special rule for Typhus' Scythe. So he probably would have gotten bonus attacks. In fact, let's test right now. Right, as long as it wasn't a 1, so yeah, he would have annihilated that Gene Stealer. I totally forgot he got bonus attacks on his weapon. So that might have made a difference in terms of where he would have been able to move, but I think in terms for this game now, he's basically just avoiding dying to the Swarmlord to make sure that Slay the Warlord isn't given up. So he's now basically safe, unless somehow the Zoanthropes up there manage to murder him in the next turn, because the Swarmlord isn't going to reach him. And the 6th turn does also end with them still holding the Relic, which might be a smarter decision for the Swarmlord to go after, to secure a draw rather than a loss. Anyway, we'll go into Tyranid turn 6 now. There wasn't much movement as we begin Tyranid's turn 6 and a lawnmower goes past the window again, apologies. The 2 Zoanthropes here attempted to do Warp Blast. They perilled, but they did actually get it. They fired it at Typhus, but it scattered wildly, so it was a miss, and Typhus is going to survive this turn at least. I got a 4 or whatever the one is where it just deals a wound on the perils table, so I randomly selected and it was the one that hadn't had any wounds, so that's them both on 1 wound now. Horsepex missed. Zombies missed, and I also forgot Acid Blood previously in the match when he did get wounded, but at this he literally can't kill that many zombies in 1 turn, and 1 extra death wouldn't have made a difference, so that's not affected anything. The Swarmlord ignored the lone Plague Marine and instead opted to come around the side of the forest and then use Warp Blast of his own in the Psychic Phase. He took out 1, I think. Yes, he took out 1 with that, and then he made a successful charge and only took out 1 of the 3 surviving Plague Marines. He actually managed to whiff quite a lot for the first time in the game. Plague Marines didn't hurt him back, But I think that now means then that the relic is contested because we're both equally close to it, I think. And in 7th edition, HQs are scoring because this is a battle-forged army. I think I've got that right. Anyway, does the game continue to turn 7? I believe it has to be a 4+ now. I'm almost certain on that. I will go check. So it's either going to be turn 7 in a second, or it's going to be the tally of the points. So I double checked the 7th edition rules, and sure enough, to get to turn 7 it has to be a 4+. So the game is over, but it's not a draw. This is a win for Chaos. Why? Well, in moving the Swarmlord to attempt to, get the relic, and you had to do that basically to contest it. So no side owns the relic, or both sides do. Either way, they discount each other. No Warlord kills. Swarmlord's still alive. Typhus, he did run a little bit, but he's also still alive. But because of the Swarmlord moving, and also because of Typhus not moving quite enough, and no side getting Linebreaker as a result, it comes down to First Blood, which was scored by the Chaos side. Oops. And because they killed the Tyrant Guard. So that is how Chaos managed to win. If this would have gone to turn 7, it's almost guaranteed the Swarmlord would have finished off those Plague Marines and thus claimed the relic. Granted, that last survivor might be able to contest, like at a stretch. Saying that, also Typhus might have got Linebreaker, but if the Swarmlord held the relic uncontested, that would have been a guaranteed Tyranid win. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. It is a Chaos Space Marine victory. It was a bloody victory, but a victory nonetheless. This was the most silliest, embarrassing part of the fight. The Horus Spectre spending all his time with zombies and not even being able to chow his way through them. If he'd gotten the charge, it might have been different, because he gets bonus attacks only on turns in which he charges. The unit would be a hell of a lot better if he had that rule just whenever. Keep his rubbish weapon skill, but whenever he does actually manage to kill something, give bonus points. That would have been a wise idea to make him actually useful. But anyway, if you enjoyed, please do consider leaving a like, and there will be more battles to come. Next, the Tyranid army is going to go up against the Tau, which is going to be an uphill struggle, shall we say. But anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and ta-ta for now.